Hi everyone, it's Margaret here. Okay, books. Books have been a passion for me my whole life. When I was a little girl, I was a voracious reader, loved reading books, and then I spent about 15 years of my life in bookselling in Colorado and in London. And I just have a huge passion for the impact that books can make on our lives. And I have, recently picked up some books that we've talked about in our Patreon group and other support groups. And it's really been precious. Now, I actually would love to start a book club. I think it's one of these things that I know a lot of you would be interested in. So leave your comments below if that's something that you'd like. But I'm really, really passionate about reading. So what the story today, though, is about some books that written by female authors who take us places, who choose to write their books, in a geography or in an area or region, and just bring that place to life through their writing. And I guess it's kind of like reading books, to travel, vicariously through the book. Now, I don't know many of these authors. I must be absolutely honest. They're all women. And as Michelle Vosberg, the author of the article that stimulated this interest in me, would say that, they're all over the world. And I'm going to go through them one at a time. Probably you'll, as I'm talking, will think, oh, yes, I know that one. I read that book. And leave your comments below. Let's make this a conversation article, because I think books do that. They generate conversation, they generate thoughts and curiosity and ideas. So I'm going to look at my notes here because I don't know, as I mentioned, many of these authors, and they are women who have written books, has huge impact, like Jacqueline Winspear. Now, I don't know that name, but she was the author of the Maisie Dobbs series. And they follow the journey of a woman from a maid in her life, from maid to a nurse. And it's got this vivid description, apparently, of England and France during World War II, which was a huge transformative period. I think World War I as well. But my mom lived through that area, and even her stories were fascinating as to how people lived and how they lived through the situation. But that's Jacqueline Winspear. And then there's Barbara Kingsolver. Now, I actually have looked at some of her books, and I think it was it the Poisonwood Bible? But there were several that I never read all the way through. I've got to be honest here. I mean, if I'd read all of these, Michelle should be sitting next to me telling the story in more detail. But she was celebrated for her strong kind of interpretation or bringing to life the Appalachian region of United States. And she wrote the Flight Behavior and the Bean Trees. Did you read any of these? And it's kind of the Congo is actually another area she worked on the Poisonwood Bible, was exploring culture and lifestyle there. So she's another person that had this ability to take you to a place, through the writing. And I think that's really powerful. So that's Jacqueline Winspear, Barbara Kingsolver, Louise L. Erdrich. I can't remember her own writing, but she was a member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. She was a Native American, and she wrote The Roundhouse and La Rose, and was talking about Native Americans in Minnesota, Wisconsin, I think North Dakota. And she just offered this kind of modern historical perspective on the situation, but also the place and the culture of her tribe. So that's Louise Erdrich. Frances Mays. Now, I do know Frances Mays because she was the person that wrote Under the Tuscan Sun, and that was, of course, turned into a movie. And this was this really lush, evocative description of Italy and the Tuscany area. And we're actually going to Tuscany, by the way, a little small group of us in October. I think we have one place left if anybody's interested, but it's going to be really fun. But she offers this kind of modern and historical context of the culture of Italy. And I think that's not her only, her only book. I think she wrote some others, but this, Rolling Hills of Tuscany, the culture, the food, the relationships, the families, connections. Very, very beautiful book and great movie. Really great, inspirational for a lot of women who are thinking of just packing it in and going somewhere else and just starting fresh. Louise Penny was the creator of the Arm and Gamache series. Now, I don't actually know this one at all, but it was set in this fictional town in Quebec, Canada. It's called Three Pines, and it was all this story about family bonds, community interaction, kind of a detective story. But I don't know exactly what these books talked about, but they were blending these kind of atmospheric goings on in the community of Three Pines in Quebec. I've been to Quebec, and the culture is so unique because it's Canadian and French speaking, and it's got a very deep cultural connection and to each other, family bonds and community engagement. I'm sure these are very fun books. The other one is Ellen Hilderbrand. She was dubbed the queen of beach reads. And I know that there's probably many that you read as when you go on holiday and you just don't want to think. You just want to have entertainment, love stories, romantic interactions, and you just want to have a fun, casual read. And this one by Ellen Hilderbrand. She was mostly focused on Massachusetts and told her stories around Nantucket, which I must admit I've never been to. But, romances, local versus tourist dynamic. The tourists are coming to town, and these are especially good when you're on holiday, you just want a bit of fun. Seaside escapism is kind of what they describe, Michelle describes it as. Now, are you enjoying this? I mean, I'm sure you're making your own list as we're talking here, but Geraldine Brooks is another writer who was deeply immersed in historical fiction, Martha's Vineyard in the 1660s. So she goes way back, and I think her book was called Caleb's Crossing. I've read about this book, but it's kind of describing 17th century Martha's Vineyard during a really difficult a pandemic-stricken time back in the 1600s or the 1700s, 16th century. And I'm really fascinated by medieval history, which is a bit earlier than that, 1200, but I should read this probably. It might be very, very cool. Historical fiction is a whole genre that, for me, if you go back to the medieval times, I'm all for it. But what about you? Are you into historical fiction? But I think she's really a cool writer, Geraldine Brooks. Maeve Binchley. Okay, Maeve Binchley, I know because she was talking about Irish life over I think 5 decades. She wrote these books kind of spanning the time and the place in Ireland. And I think that that's another one that could take you places with the writing when they describe the landscapes and the places and the climate, the agriculture, all the things that make up a place and the culture that's woven into that. She says humanity and heart and humor are the words that Michelle used to describe it. But I don't know the name of her books, actually. I should have written them down. But she writes these books about Ireland. And I know a lot of people have a connection with Ireland because it's a place that a lot of us indirectly came from, and a lot of immigrants came to the country, United States, and other parts of the world from Ireland. And today is a booming place. So that's another kind of genre altogether that someone I'm sure will pick up on. But these are all really cool stories that take you time traveling. I've got 2 more here to make up my 10. But the Diana Gabaldon. Oh, yes, we all know her because I've never read them and I feel so embarrassed. It's the Outlander series. Now, the Outlander series, of course, is the 18th century Scottish Highlands, and I have a huge passion for Scotland. I love it so much. I've traveled quite a bit around Scotland, and I should probably read Outlander because I think it would be very was sort of in tune with my personality. And it's got this, romance, history, and adventure, culture, all these things about the world of the Outlander. What's it about, actually? It's a time-traveling nurse called Claire Randall. It does sound good. Has anybody read the Outlander? And I think people have read the series. I think it's a series of books. And if you can give me some help here, where do I get started with the Outlander? Because maybe just go to the first book, but if there's one that you think I could read and dive into it and enjoy, I really would genuinely like to learn that. Again, back to this, I'd love to have a book club to feature some of these things. Elizabeth Strout is the final one that Michelle mentions. She says she's small town American life in Maine and Illinois. She had a book called, was the book called Olive Kitteridge or The Burgess Boys? And I think these are, again, similar to one we mentioned earlier, about community ties, about relationships in a small town, how they work. And this is in small town America in Maine and Illinois. And I think the thing about her books that I was reading the notes is that they were the characters are really flawed and broken and good and not so good, and they just wove this whole complexity of humanity in a small town. And I think, to be honest with you, that even goes on today, right? So we've talked mostly here about United States characters, but there's one little bonus here I've got for you, which is Sophie Kinsella. Sophie Kinsella is in London. She writes the Shopaholic books, the Shopaholic series, and she's just really good at capturing London. I was born in London, so I know it really well in my heart. I lived maybe total of 20 years of my life in London, or in England at least. But I love it so much, and it's so random, so crazy, so full of diversity. And she captures that in her Shopaholic series. I guess it's kind of focused on money and shopping and the kind of that lighter side of life, but she really does, in lots of people's opinion, really capture London charm. And again, that's what these authors are all doing. They're taking you to a place in history, a place in modern time, and they really are like the ones that you can grow from. Also, I wanted to mention really briefly about another bonus, which is the Nina George books, which are about Paris, and these are little Paris bookshop series, and it takes you right to Paris, all the little quaint cafes and coffee shops, and it really highlights that, again, French culture. So Sophie Kinsella, Nina George, London and Paris, respectively. They offer armchair travel, right? It's free. Well, it's not free. The book it costs money on Kindle or whatever. If you do it that way, it's cheaper. But they just take you places. Have we missed any travel authors, male or women, really, who you really, really like? I hope that you enjoy this little chat. I really do. I mean, books, whenever I get talking about books, I get so excited and passionate. But tell us about your favorite books in general. Just what are you reading? What's your passion right now? I must admit, right now my passion is some men authors like Matt Haig, The Midnight Library, How to Stop Time. What's the other one that I'm reading? I've read, the Moscow Gentleman in Moscow by Emer Towles. Those are kind of ones I've read recently. Well, a year or so ago. Now I'm just catching up on short stories. Some fun stuff out there. So have a fabulous day, everybody. Get your books and have a wonderful Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whatever day in the week is, whatever place in the world. I love you guys. Take good care. Sending you hugs. Bye.